Welcome, everybody. The first class of methodology of scientific research, and I will talk first and you talk second, okay? I hope I don't speak English. I mean, it's not my native language, so if you don't understand me, it's my fault. But if you don't ask, it's your fault. So ask. If you don't understand anything, you ask. Okay? So nobody speaks English here.
Okay.
But, welcome to this the logo of this course, and welcome. And today I'm going to give a very generic introduction and to eventually focus to what is the point. So these are the questions of today. So starting with who? Who am I? Why? My name is Andrés Saravena. Hassan wrote to Duarte. Duarte was my grandpa. He died 10 years ago.
I'm so sorry. Actually, it was mentioned. Your full name was mentioned on your CV.
Yeah. That is the point. That in the Spanish and Latin American tradition, we have short name and long name. And you can look, for example, what is the full name of Julio Iglesias or the King of Spain. The King of Spain has like 10 names. Okay. But people say Philip. The point is that we have the long name and short name, and the family name is usually, well, so let's say you have two given names and two family names, one from the father, one from the mother. And I don't know, it's a mess. But the advantage is that there is less chance that you have two people with the same name. And they tell me, I have a friend from Jordan, and she tell me that is the Arab tradition. That in Arab tradition you keep kind of all the names, and which is probably because Spain has a strong Arab tradition. In Turkey, we use more like a French tradition, like you get only one name, and when people get married, one of them lose the name, and that 99.9% of time is the wife that lose the name, and it's a big mess. It's a big problem. Especially if you publish, you have like all your papers in your maiden name, then you get married and you lose all your papers. Complicated. Anyway, as you see, you read things, so I am not a biologist, so if I make biological errors, you tell me. But I can speak language, biological language, with some accent. So, and I did most of my education in Chile, which, let's say, a French tradition. Was in the Faculty of Engineering and Science, so I am an engineer and a scientist, which is a particular point of view, but I'm certainly not a biologist. I never pipetted, let's say. But I can cook. That is my closest to biology. I can cook. I can cook well. So okay, so okay, that's me. Who are you? You have to. Who are you? Let's say with no, not Asus, Sarah. Because she arrived first in order of arrival. Sarah, who are you?
My name is Zahra Shahbar. I'm from Iran, and I'm in the second semester of molecular biology and genetics.
Okay.
And here I am.
But before your undergrad, where you did your undergrad?
Licence, you mean bachelor?
Yeah.
Well, I just finished my bachelor in Tehran University in Iran.
Okay.
And I just search on how curcumin affect on cancer cells.
Okay.
Just as a small part of the big research. So here I am.
So in molecular biology, because it's not obvious. People sometimes do master in a topic different than the undergrad. It's not.
It was cell and molecular biology. It wasn't a molecular biology.
Okay, cell and molecular biology. Interesting.
Good.
Good. Yeah. But for example, I have a student who did anthropology, and now they're doing this thing because there is a connection from there. Or people do neurology, or people, I don't know. That maybe people who want to do bioinformatics sometimes do computer science first and then do molecular biology in them. So it's, Jeffrey, do you want to say anything about your life?
Oh, well, not in this situation. I don't have anything to tell.
No, I am asking Jemre, not Sara.
Okay.
Yeah, next one. Yeah. Jemre is a molecular biology a molecular biologist from Istanbul University, and now is doing also the master. And I am her advisor, so we work together. And she did this course last year, and this will be kind of an experiment in teaching assistant. Like, she will tell me what I did wrong, and there's something that she knows better than me, so we are going to share. And there is a trick, like if you don't want to speak English and you want to speak Turkish, you can speak with Cemre. Or if you want to gossip about the professor, you can speak with her. So something like that. Hassan, what about you?
So my name is Hassan Miraj, and I'm here for my master's in molecular biology and genetics in Istanbul University. This is my second semester too.
Okay.
Before this, I did my bachelor's in Pakistan in biotechnology from Formation College. And that's it. I also did a summer program once related to environment studies. And that's about it. My thesis work in my bachelor's was mainly about genomic, how do I say this in English? It was mainly about GMO wheat. I worked on GMO wheat, transgenic wheat, and I was testing it in different pH levels of soils, and I was testing which one would give us the best results. So that was my research in bachelor's.
Interesting. So okay. So interesting. We can take a look at something like that. I don't know if it's published or something. Thank you. We know better each one now. And what is the other question that I had for? No, I don't have. I forgot. If I had, I forgot. But I will have another. Why? That is the next question. Why are you here? I give you the question. Well, essentially, why you took this course?
Well, if I answer you correctly, if I'm being true here, the first and foremost reason was it was in English. Secondly, I went to the course content, and I've actually already taken the Bilimsel Araştırma course, but I took this one again because I found the course content to be a bit different. Your method, the way it was mentioned in the course content, at least it felt as if it's gonna be more talking and gonna be more of a discussion. That's why I took this course.
Well, that is true, despite that I decided to teach something completely different than before. But yeah, I have the style, and Jemre can be my witness that I like. Well, you already saw this is more a dialogue, and because the basic point is that this is a grad level course, and you are expected to behave like a researcher, to have an opinion and to do the work. This is not high school where you are kind of passively getting information like a vase that people put water in a vase. No, this is more like you are going. You have to do your own thing. Jemre, no, well, if she can speak, she will say. But if I say, like, I asked her to come, and I don't know. Do you have a microphone, or shall we go to Sara?
Okay. Well, I did choose this course because I'm really interested always in methods of research and how can we researchers research for their topic. So I did choose this course for this reason.
Well, yeah, method. Okay. because initially this course was more, let's say, philosophical discussion about what is the scientific method and what are the points that are relevant to have a good scientific result, let's say. And then it has evolved to be more like about experimental design. And now it evolved more specifically to be about design of experiment about gene expression. That is the particular topic. Eventually, if we have time at the end, we can apply to other things like the thing with the GMO plants. That can be a topic. So, okay, so what are we doing here? Well, I give you the point here. The big topic of this course is transcription. So, in the idea of learning to design better experiments, and the philosophy that I propose here is that if you want to do a good experiment, you need to know how to analyze the result before you do the experiment. 99.9 or maybe 110 of the experiment that people bring to me and they have a problem is because they don't know how to analyze. They get the money, they did an experiment, they spent a lot of time and a lot of energy, and they got nothing because the experiment was not well designed. And they only realize that when they are analyzing data. That is the problem, the typical problem of people who get problem is that they don't know what they are doing until it's too late, until they spend the money. So my philosophy is do the analysis first, and then you do the experiment. How you do the analysis without the experiment? Well, you see if there is some pre-published data. If necessary, you do some simulation. But essentially, you should know exactly what you are going to do after the experiment finish. Otherwise, the experiment is going to be just raw data. It's not clear that you are going to get some impact. So basically that we're saying better experiments and higher impact. That is the why at the end. We want to have a higher impact. For that, we want to have better experiments. For that, we want to design them. And for that, we need to learn how to analyze them. And in particular, I choose the topic of gene expression because because it's the experiment that we are doing now, and so it's going to be, if you want, practical. So, well, I don't know. I am assuming that I don't need to explain why transcription, gene expression is important. It's kind of part of the popular culture, let's say. Gene expression is kind of the thing that, well, at least in molecular biology. Maybe in cell biology you have other questions, but certainly gene expression is something useful. We lost Hassan. No camera, no video. He died. Okay. How do we fit? He's going to miss the good slides.
No, I'm right here.
You are here.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Since I don't see you, I don't know if you are looking. So, yeah, sometimes I turn the camera when my computer starts to be very hot, I have to turn the camera, but today is not very hot. So how we fit? Going to the origin of this course, I am going to talk about what is science. We are going to talk about what is science. So what is science? Since there is no authority in science, there is not like the Ministry of Magic or Ministry of Science. There is no such thing that define like, oh, this is science, this is not science. There's not kind of official definition, but it's some kind of agreement that in general people tend to agree. Science, one of the points is that is defined by agreement of people. One definition is that science is whatever a scientist do. I'm a scientist, therefore everything I do is scientific, which is kind of weak because you see, for example, I can be expert in molecular biology, but if they ask me about earthquakes, let's say, or let's say the other way, I may be expert in analysis of DNA sequence. But if you ask me about vaccines, I am not in a better position than anybody else. So scientists are not always doing science. If I speak about football, for example, I would probably not be in any better position. Well, I don't know anything about football. I am worse than everybody. But so it's not enough that you are a scientist and therefore what you do is science. A better definition is that what you do, I mean, science is the result of applying what we call the scientific method. Not everybody agree with this definition, but it's a kind of practical definition that there is something that we call the scientific method, and if we follow the method, we are doing science. But it's kind of clear, at least in one side, that if you don't apply the scientific method, it's not clear that you are doing science and not just guessing. So what is the scientific method? Again, this is not unofficial. I will tell you what is my framework, the way that I see it, and you are welcome to give some feedback about. So in this case, I'm going to start with nature. Science is about nature or some kind of reality that it's outside us. So for now, let's say this is natural science. So this is the topic. That is the thing that we want to know, reality, in particular nature. We start by observing nature. We are observers of nature. And there is a point here that is relevant, that we assume that we are not inside the thing being observed. Okay, we look at, I mean, if I look at this vase, for example, I am not the vase, which is easy for thinking, like the observer is in this side and the object is in the other side, and they don't touch, they don't affect. The minimum that you want to say is that the fact that you are observing something is not affecting the object. And that is not always true. In particular, in social science, in economy, for example, it is clear, there are many examples that show that if you do an experiment, the fact that you're doing the experiment change the behavior of the people being observed. So, well, in general, in molecular biology, that is not a problem, but that can be a problem in social science. And interestingly, it's also the issue with quantum mechanics or quantum physics. The fact that you observe something changes that something. Then there is the next step is that when we observe nature, we find that there's some pattern, something that repeats. And that is super, super important. I mean, if, I don't know, let's say something random happened and I don't know, there was rain today, let's say. What can I say about the fact that it rained today? Is probably not very much. Or let's say that I found a coin in the street, or let's say that, I don't know, I opened the egg and I found 2 yolks instead of 1. This thing can happen. There is some variability that happens in nature. But if we are not able to see the same pattern happen again and again, if we don't see the same phenomena happen more than one time, it's hard that we make a conclusion. So the kind of conclusion here can be very basic. For example, I can tell you that in January, it's usually cold, at least in this part of the world. In my country, it tends to be the contrary. And in July, it tends to be hot. And it tends to rain in February, let's say. We may have even snow. But in July, we usually don't get snow. So it can be very, very basic. But what I want to emphasize here that the nature, the logic of what we are doing here is that we are looking for something that repeats. So, for example, you want to say that if I put this plant under this salinity or pH conditions, I will get some result. And if I do it again, I will get more or less the same result. Maybe not 100% the same, but we will have a pattern. Like higher pH, better yield, lower yield. Well, I don't know, but you want to see a pattern. You know, for example, let's say if you eat sugar, you get fat. Let's say if you drink coffee, you cannot sleep. So you find this pattern. Okay, so finding patterns is one of the important things, essentially, to go to the point that, let me tell you, is the most important one. The most important part, in my opinion, is asking a question, asking the good question. Good answers to bad questions are useless. And we have many of them. Many of them. Sometimes you don't even get to publish them. Sometimes they get published anyway, but I've been in many projects that we had good answers to bad questions. On the other side, good questions are good even if you don't get a good answer or no answer at all. So what I want to teach you is that the most important thing that you can do as a scientist is to ask good questions. Eventually, you can have a good answer to that question, but if you don't have the question, if you don't have very clear what is the question that you want to solve, then you will never get any good answer. And believe me, I spent too many years of my life chasing the bad questions. I don't have a rule for this except practice, so we will put some practice. So for example, you say, look, if I drink coffee, I cannot sleep in the night. Okay, what is the question is why people cannot sleep? You have more questions like, what is the effect on blood pressure, or what is the effect in the long term? It is good or bad? Maybe that is the question. Is it healthy or unhealthy? Maybe that is the question, no? Is it good or bad? So what we do next in science is we do an explanation. We tell you, look, there is something in the coffee that affects the neurochemical molecules that affect sleeping, and they will block this thing. So yeah, for example, there's this explanation that says that neurons have some receptors, and when you drink, that they accumulate some kind of, what is the name? I don't know, some kind of hormones attached to the neurons, and you feel sleepy. The feeling of sleepy corresponds to concentration of something, and in particular when they attach to some receptors in the membrane of the neurons. Then if you drink coffee, the molecule that we call caffeine, that is contained in coffee, will attach to the same places and will block the other, or I don't remember what is the other thing, dopamine or whatever, that they essentially compete for the same places. So therefore you don't get sleepy because the hormone that should bind doesn't bind. So you have and if you look, that explanation essentially, I did it with the hand, but you can draw it. You have the cell, you have the receptor, and you have two entities competing to each other. What is an antagonist, no? And therefore you can draw it. You can draw it, and that is what we call a model. What my explanation, and that is the other idea that I would like to present, that every time we do an explanation, we are telling a story, because explanations are stories that we tell with words, but there are stories based on a model, and models can be like the drawing that you see in your mind. You have the cell and you have the receptor, and something is competing and they are fighting. That is a model. Some of these models can even be formalized at a mathematical level. Not all models are mathematicals, but I mean, of course, mathematical models are more powerful because they allow you to make better predictions. But the basic point that I want to emphasize is that making explanation is the same as making models. If you have a model, you can tell stories. And at some level, the only thing that we can do is to tell a story. And if you see, like, you have one story from this side, one story from this side, and you have different perspectives. The model is the thing that is the 3D thing that I have here. The explanations are the thing that you see from every perspective. So one model can create several stories, but the thing that is behind, for example, I mean, if I have a model about the caffeine, I can maybe predict something like, for example, if I am already sleepy and I drink coffee, I will not awake. Because if I am already sleepy, it means that the dopamine already bound to the surface of the cell. Okay? So that is a different story that I made from the same model, a prediction. So in that sense, coffee doesn't wake you up, but blocks you to getting sleepy, which is not the same. I mean, the idea that most models, maybe not all of them, but most models can be drawn. There is a tradition that people like to describe models with words. People like to tell stories and with, I don't know, like, I mean, the people in 19th century were very much about doing things with words. If you read, I don't know, physicists or economists from the 19th century. But now we have, essentially because the tool that they have the printer, and the press was good for text, but not for drawings. Now that we have computers, and our main media is not paper, but the web, then you can have models that are more graphical and even animations, and you can have a video or something like that. So you can imagine something like that. Anyway, this explanation should be able to make prediction. If your model is not able to make a prediction, that's not an explanation. You say, like, I don't know, things happen. Okay, why they happen? Because things happen. Okay, but what can you predict? That thing will happen. That is not a prediction. I mean, if you say, like, Zeus say that if you drink coffee, you will wake up, and you cannot make any prediction based on the wish of Zeus, then you don't have a something, I mean, not a scientific explanation, not the one that we can call scientific. Why we want to make scientific a prediction? Why we demand that scientific explanation should make prediction? Because this prediction should be tested, should be able to be tested in the lab. Okay, you need to have, if you have a theory, you should be able to test it. Now, there is a important philosophical point to know here is this: if the test is negative, if your prediction is not valid, then you know that your model is wrong. And you go back to here. You need to find another explanation that makes better predictions and allow you to get a test that is positive. Now, if the test is positive, it doesn't show really that your model is correct. So we are in a very unfortunate situation, and apparently there is no way to solve it. It's like we cannot prove that explanations are true, because later you may have more information and you may find that this explanation was not correct. Classical example is you have a pattern that you see that things fall. You have something and you drop it and it falls. And there is even a pattern that they fall following a parabolic shape and so. And Newton make a law about that and say, okay, this is the model, the Newton mechanics. And that works very well until people start to measure more things and they found that it is not always true. So some predictions made by Newton are not valid today. And that is why you have Einstein theory that allow you to explain more things. So Newton was considered valid for 300 years, and it's still good for every day. I mean, if you are in a car, if you move in our world, if you are not a atom or a galaxy, then these things are fine for us. But if you are thinking about, let's say, modeling proteins and modeling the interaction between atoms in a protein, then you need a better model. Then, if you pass this test, you should prepare to publish. And this is another important characteristic of science. If you, let's say that typically if you work in a pharmaceutical company and you have a result and the result is not published, we don't consider it to be part of human knowledge. It is kind of maybe, or let's say maybe there is an internal document, but if I have a result and I don't tell anybody, it doesn't exist. Because there is a basic point here that your result should be tested by someone else. Someone else should be able to do the same experiment or the same analysis and get to the same conclusion as you. If you cannot convince other people, then you have proven nothing. The basic question is here is that it's very, very easy to fool ourselves. You know, it's very easy to have a theory and believe your own theory. And we all love our own theory because we make our own theory. But it's very easy to be wrong. So how you avoid being wrong? Well, all this method is about how to not be wrong, not very much. And peer review is an important step. You have to write a paper or some kind of document, and you will be evaluated. Now, there is a couple of comments that I want to say here that are relevant for us. Number one, this is peer. Peer meaning someone like you. It's not that you convince your boss or the dean, or even, let's say, maybe you got the Nobel Prize. You are a very famous scientist because you got the Nobel Prize. You still have to follow the same path, and you are not, even if your boss believe you, even if your director say, you are the best scientist and whatever you say, we will do it, it doesn't work like that. Even the smallest, and there are many, many cases, but well, maybe not many, but there are cases in when students prove that the professor is wrong and the student is right, and you have to change things. People don't like that, but it's the way that science works. And the second point that you have to know that in today's world, this peer review is in English. Okay? For good or bad, the language of science today is English. What are the alternatives? Well, the most spoken language in the world is Chinese. I mean, the first language. If you count how many people speak the native language, the most common is English, Chinese. So we can all learn Chinese. That is an option, which is certainly something that you probably will have to do, since China is going to be one of the biggest scientific research centers in the world in the next 100 years. I mean, the China economy is growing fast and fast, and they have a lot of good researchers and a lot of good, and I will tell you even more. Most of PhD students in United States today are either Chinese or Indian. So that is probably going to be the next language. But today, the language is English. Before that, let's say 30 years ago, you had the option of speaking in Russian, because the Soviet Union was a big scientific institution. Not anymore. Before that, let's say 70 years ago, people used to also publish science in German. Einstein and company did their work in German. Not anymore. After the Second War, they don't have any more presence. So, and before that, people did it in French. Newton, in particular, for example, was written in Latin. And if you go back probably before that, I mean, 1,000 years ago, all science was written in Arab. And before that, in Greek. And before that, I don't know. Some Babylonian, I don't know. I don't know if there was. Point is, you have to write in English. And that means that I'm going to give you homework about writing things in English. Because something that I have found very late is that people get to the final stage of their work and they don't know how to write. So writing takes time and take energy and take discipline. So the best thing I can do for you is to encourage you to write. Okay. Okay, so what is the next step in this theory? Well, we create new knowledge. When your paper is published, it becomes part of what we call the human knowledge. And the goal of science, I put it here, the goal of science is to produce new knowledge. That is what we do in science. Science is the process of creating new knowledge about nature, about something. Last step to complete, that is why, by the way, clone knowledge is at the center here, because it's the center of all this process. And the last step in this process is that we use knowledge to make our observations. So I have a phrase here that you can, I hope to explain it later. It will take some time to get, but we use our knowledge in our observation. Let's say, for example, you use a microscope or you use a PCR machine or something like that. And that is part of your observation because you have the knowledge that these machines are good at reflecting nature. Okay, so our observation is conditioned by two things: what we see and the knowledge that we get, that we have already. Okay, so I have a couple of slides here that I think I say many things of this. I'm going to give all the slides. Okay. Still, it's a good habit to take your own notes. Is to write your own version of things, your own summary. It's a good thing. So, a couple of comments. So, in our case, it is we are going to be talking about things that are outside us, not about something that happened inside me. It's not about, let's say, psychological experience, or it's not about how society works because we are part of that society. It's more like about things that we are not inside them, about things that we can measure. Okay. It is hard to make science about happiness or about love or about things that are important, but they are hard to see and hard to measure, at least directly. Explanations. Okay, error here. Provide explanations. Explanations, their story, but they should be logic and coherent. And true logic is when you get to mathematics. Peer review and replicable. No. Well, there is a point that I will say that we have an assumption here. The assumption that we are making that there is reality outside us. So if you saw the movie The Matrix, did you saw them? I don't know, because people see different movies in different countries. So I don't know if you have seen the movie The Matrix. Yeah.
Yeah, I did see that.
Okay. Yeah. Hassan is meditating deeply. I don't know. He's reading something else or.
No.
Did you saw the movie The Matrix?
Your faces are on the bottom of my screen. Now they're on the side, and now I'm looking here. It's just that I'm focused on the class.
Yeah. But did you saw the movie The Matrix?
Yes, I have in my childhood. I don't remember it.
In your childhood? Oh my gosh, I'm so old.
No.
Yeah. When people see
I feel old now.
Yeah. People speak about old movies that I saw when I was already old. Well, Well, Matrix it's a science fiction movie, but they took ideas that you can trace back to Plato, you know, and but one of the points is that how you know if reality is reality, how you know if reality exists. And let me put this example. Maybe we were created 5 minutes ago with memory. We cannot prove that we existed yesterday. The only thing that we have to prove that we exist yesterday are our memories. But if the universe was created yesterday or 5 minutes ago, and when we were created, we had memory, we cannot distinguish. So we are assuming that there is something. I mean, maybe we are in the matrix, maybe we are a simulation and our brains are simulated in a supercomputer and there is nothing outside. It's just a simulation, yeah.
But science can disprove this, right? Because
in fact, no, there is a strong suspicion that maybe we are in a simulation. That
what about the scientific experiments which prove that, okay, this thing existed maybe 1,000 years ago and something? What about those?
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, but these are all in the assumption that these things really exist. I mean, because we have a framework. We're making an hypothesis that things exist outside us and that we can observe them. And more important, there are rules, that the universe is governed by rules. And these rules do not change with time. I mean, let's say rules, I'm speaking like gravity or conservation of mass, the basic rules. And we think that these rules are always the same through all the history of the universe, and everywhere in the universe are the same. And if you go very philosophical, these are kind of hypotheses that we cannot really know or not know. So what I'm saying that we took this as a starting point, and we believe that these are true. They make sense, let's say, and they allow us to make predictions that work for our purpose. I mean, we can make planes and rockets and medicine and vaccines, and we live longer or happier life because we understand the world this way. But I cannot demonstrate that we are not in the matrix. If the matrix is a very good simulation, you cannot distinguish from reality. I mean, well, okay. At the end of the course, we can fantasize a little bit, but right now I don't have. I mean, we need probably a little more element, because people ask this question. No? People have written papers and think what kind of experiment we can do and think. But the point is this: there is a basic idea that nature, reality, has some rules, like gravity and conservation of energy and so, and they are not completely random. There is some randomness, but they tend to follow some rules. The rules have some logic. They are not arbitrary. I mean, maybe in the origin they are arbitrary, like gravitational constant or whatever. But the point is that once they are set, they do not change. There's no exceptions here. And the most of the case, we don't see these rules directly, like gravity, for example. But we can discover these rules using reason. So the point of science is to find what are the rules that govern. That's the kind of the ultimate goal, like how nature works. That is the last question, how nature works, or if you like, why nature works the way it works. And well, the authority, I insist that is not, you can convince me, but it will not make more true. It's not about convincing the professor. I mean, or let me say it the other way. I am the professor, but it doesn't mean that everything that I say is correct. Okay? So everybody can know or not. Okay, just a couple of comments. Let me go quickly here. People call exact science. I I like to think that mathematics is not really a science because it's not about nature. Mathematics is about things that only exist in our mind. They don't exist in nature. There is a definition that people use, positive science. Positive here doesn't mean like plus sign. It's not like they are good. Here, positive comes from the Latin to put outside. Someone put thing, and the basic is like the observer is not part of the system being observed. So natural science is a case of positive science, but in the philosophy of science book, you will find that people speak about positive science, and it doesn't mean that they are good sciences. It means literally that is something that is put outside us. And social science, for example, to me, at least, they are not positive in the sense that they are not about something that is outside, it's something that we are inside. And the fact that we do an experiment in social science affects society. So, I mean, if I ask you about how you breathe, you are probably going to breathe different than if I don't. If you live your life, you never think about breathing. But if I ask you, are you breathing correctly? You will start to, because I asked the question. Okay, so that is kind of general culture. So people should know the difference of positive and non-positive science. Technology, in contrast, is about things that humans do. And it will come the natural question. You don't need to answer now, but the natural question is molecular biology. Is science or technology? I feel in the position to speak because I am first an engineer, so I learned technology before learning science. So I've been in both sides. And I have a long-term homework, again, in the favor of making you what I think is going to be good for you as a scientist, is to ask questions, practice asking questions. I believe that asking good questions is essential to have a good science. And the only way that I know to ask good questions is to ask a lot of questions, to get used to ask questions. There is an interesting thing, like there is this definition that I'm going to combining with the previous question. In science, we observe what exists and we ask why. Why there is winter, why plants grow, why we have pandemics, okay? In technology, we look what doesn't exist and we ask why not. For example, there is no vaccine to COVID. Why not? Why cannot we make a vaccine to avoid pandemics, let's say? Or why cannot have a better way to detect when the next pandemic is going to arrive? Why cannot change the protocol of processing bats in China so we can avoid that the things happen in the first moment? So that is one definition. Science asks why about things that exist. Technology asks why not about things that don't exist. So, but both are asking questions. So I have an example, and Jemre had a good answer when she did the course. But the question is, the point is that, and I want to ask you at the end of the semester, what are the questions that you? So you go by the street and you say, why there are so many cats in Istanbul and not so many dogs? Or why people don't follow traffic rules in Turkey as they follow in Germany, let's say? Or I don't know. Why people dress the way they dress? Why bankers use ties? I don't know. The point is that to have good questions, you have to have a lot of questions. Not all questions are going to be good, but if you don't start asking questions, you will not get to the good ones. Okay? What is science? So, this history of science according to Microsoft. The first kind of science is, let's say, botany. You collect data, you see that thing exists, you describe thing that you observe, and you have a large history of people collecting, like you have plants and you have stars, and they put names to things. And well, I put here Galileo as the poster child of this, but probably the best poster child will be Linnaeus, who made the first taxonomy. Okay. Second story is creating some theory, and the poster guy here is Newton. That he took Galileo, he took Kepler, he took all the information that they had before and made a theory that could explain things. And you have Mendel, you have Darwin, even, well, there's a first law of Kepler, but Newton law of gravity and so. And this is something like 500 years old. There's some early thing, but the big change happened, I will say, with Newton. Newton is a guy who changes things very much. Then, since the middle of the 20th century, when computers were invented, we can make simulations. We have the equations and we can simulate, for example, protein prediction and computational biology. These are made only because we have computers. Poster boy here, John von Neumann. You should know John von Neumann is one of the genius. Like Newton and Galileo are a genius. And what we are here, database. This happened now that we have not only computers, but a lot of data, microarray, RNA-seq. We use computers to find relationship patterns that we have not seen before. That is only happening now, and this is going to be the kind of science that you will live.